Hello and welcome to Tech for Non-techies, the only podcast that demystifies the fast-growing technology sector. I'm your host, Sophia Matveeva, Chicago-based MBA and tech entrepreneur. My aim here is to give you the skills, knowledge and confidence to find opportunities in the tech sector, whether that's through founding a company, getting a dream job, or bringing a fresh perspective to your work. Hello, smart people. How are you today? How is life? Are you waxed and waxed? That's the new saying these days. I'm so excited about summer, I just can't tell you. Obviously, I'm excited to sit on terraces in London and in New York and in Paris and in Mykonos and everywhere and drink cocktails whilst wearing something unbelievably glamorous. I'm also excited about what we've got going on at Tech for Non-techies. I'm currently interviewing MBA interns from Chicago booth to join me this summer to work on some special projects. The plan, my dears, is to get bigger and bring this knowledge to more people. I do honestly believe that understanding how tech products get built and how the companies behind them make money is just a key skill in today's economy. Almost every company now is a tech company in some shape or form. So, whether you want to start a company or fund one, or just be super amazing at your job, or get a super amazing job, the basics of tech and product management and thinking like a tech investor, I think these skills are just essential these days. I often talk about how hard it is to be a non-techie in tech because you don't know what you don't know. So remember Donald Rumsfeld and his unknown unknowns? Well, for non-techies, the technology sector is full of unknown unknowns. You're aware that you don't know things, but you don't know what those things are, so you don't even know what to Google. Even if you are super keen to learn, if nobody tells you what concept you should know, you won't even know where to get started. But thankfully, you have me. This is why I teach you concepts that I know to be useful. Today, we will be learning about technical debt. And I hear your ears are they just want to shrink because you're thinking technical and debt, like shit, I'm not doing this. Trust me, I'm a doctor. I'm not a doctor, but trust me anyway. This is not hard to understand. And the person who is taking you through this, the person who's explaining this concept, is a non-techie himself. So honestly, don't get put off by the title and have a listen. It's not going to hurt you. You'll be surprised by how simple the concept is. Today's speaker is Alexandre, the CEO and co-founder of StepSize, a company that helps engineers track and reduce technical debt. Alexandre is a non-technical founder who has spent years working with engineers so he can comfortably straddle the tech divide, which is why we love him. What you're about to hear is an excerpt from a masterclass that we had with Alexandre for Tech for Non-techies members. For the full session and learning notes, come and join us as a member at Tech for Non-techies so you can participate in all of our live sessions and get your questions answered. And now, let's learn something new. So today, we're going to cover your journey as a non-technical founder to running a tech business, which is actually a very techie business. Mm-hmm. So it's not like we've had some founders who are using technology to provide a non-technical solution, but you are using technology to provide a solution to developers. So this is why I really wanted to drill into that. But also, the solution that the problem that you're seeking to solve is technical debt. Mm-hmm. And nobody knows what that is when they come out of the womb.
Yeah.
Maybe you did, but I didn't.
I did not. No.
So, actually, why don't we start there? Why don't you start by telling us what technical debt is, and then we can get into your story and into the company. And as people join, then please write your questions into the chat box as they come up. But And also, if you don't understand the explanations that are being given, then also say, what are you talking about?
Please do.
Can you say it again?
Yeah. Please do, because I spend my days speaking to engineers usually about this stuff. And whenever I mention technical debt, they go, oh, yeah, got it. I know what you mean. And then we get into the details. So please stop me if it doesn't make sense. So actually, let's just set the scene quickly. The premise to technical debt is whenever you write a line of code, it has a cost attached to it. The obvious one being you need to spend time writing it, or you need to pay someone writing it. That's the one that we all think about. Now, the one that's a bit more sneaky that we often forget is that there is also a maintenance cost to every line of code that you write. And I'll try to explain. An analogy I love to work with is that of a chef's kitchen, right? When they're going crazy, taking notes, when they're going crazy trying to make the service, everyone is cleaning up as they go. And when the service is done, everything needs to be immaculate again. And if you don't do that, some government service is going to come shut you down because you're going to make your guests sick, right? The idea is the same when you build software. There is a certain amount of continuous cleaning up that needs to happen if you want your code base to stay healthy, if you want to be able to keep shipping features on it very quickly, if you want your engineers to be happy working with it, and if you want to avoid having too many bugs that will impact your customers in that code base, right? And the technical debt analogy comes from financial debt, right? When you take out a loan, there's a principal that you need to pay back. There is interest that you accrue month over month. I'll try to make the two analogies overlap. Technical debt is that maintenance cost that you need to pay on an ongoing basis. And we can go into why it happens, why that is, but it's just one of these sort of laws of software development physics, if that's a thing. It is inevitable. You will write code, you have to pay the maintenance tax, hence the name of that conversation. And if you don't, you'll bump into issues.
Interesting. So this is why I wanted to cover this for non-techies, especially because I remember when I first heard those words, and just the word technical, a bit scary. Debt, also scary. Put them together. I was like, do I have to know what this is?
Yeah, this is not my job.
Because if I find out, then I can no longer pretend that I don't know. If I find out, then I'm going to have to deal with it. And I really don't want to deal with it.
Yeah. The ostrich strategy.
Exactly. The ostrich strategy of management. Not one for the long term, I tell you. So I found this out because we would have, with my product team, we would have fairly regular, well, I thought they were very regular. I was told that they're not regular enough, but essentially product team meetings when the product team would tell me what they thought was wrong with me and with the way we were. So I would often need a stiff drink after that. And I remember the engineers said that we are shipping features so quickly that they've accumulated all this technical debt, and that essentially me and the community manager and the designer, we have to stop with the designs and give them some time to work on the technical debt. And I remember my jaw just falling, being like, "Look, we have this thing. Is it bad? Like, is it like gangrene? Like, do we have to amputate?"
Yeah.
And then I found out that actually they just need some time to sort of clean up the kitchen. It got to the point that yes, they needed some time when then the product team who were not developers essentially needed to occupy themselves by doing other things, which I think, which is something also I want to delve into with you, because when that happened to me, I remember thinking, well, I can't just not pay the UX designer while the developers are working, because we can't create designs.
Yeah.
I can't just be like, oh, the developers are working, so I'm not going to pay you for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's not possible.
I think you raised a bunch of very good questions when you were talking about all this. The first one is, why does technical debt happen? Right? Like, where does it come from? I like to think of it this way. When you're writing software, you're writing code, you are doing so based on your current understanding of the problem you're solving, right? Like I have an idea, I write code to fit my assumptions about this idea. Now, these assumptions will change over time because you'll put it in front of customers, you'll learn new things, you'll have new ideas, you'll want to change stuff. Your code, unless if you invest into making it match your new understanding of the problem, will not. As soon as that's happened, you have technical debt. I'll give you an example. You might build a business thinking that all of your customers are going to be in the UK, so the only currency you support is pounds. And you release your software, and it turns out that, holy shit, all of these people across the world love it. And all of a sudden you have to support all these extra countries that you never thought you'd have to deal with, right? Usually you do it because you want to get paid. But my point is that it was inevitable because it was unpredictable. You could not have guessed that this would happen. And even if you tried, it wouldn't have been the right thing to do because you would be over-optimizing too early, right? And so it's a delicate balance between these two forces. Now, something else that happens as well is that obviously this is not the only source of technical debt. And if you want to read more about tech debt, I invite you to head to, well, the Stepsize blog. We have a bunch of that here, but also to Martin Fowler's blog, because he's really good at explaining all this stuff. And one of the concepts he came up with is called the technical debt quadrant. And I'm looking at it right now. If you Google it, you'll have it on Google Images, but it's basically this idea that you can place any debt into this quadrant. It's a matrix 4x4, a couple categories. Debt can be reckless or prudent, and it can be deliberate or accidental. I'll give you one of his example. A debt that is both reckless but deliberate is to say, we don't have time to design this thing properly, let's just ship it. Right? It's reckless because it's going to have a very high cost, and it's deliberate because you made that choice, right? A deliberate and prudent debt is to say, well, you know what? We want to ship this thing now, so we're going to go down the MVP route, and we'll deal with the consequences later, right? We understand we're deliberately taking on this debt, and it's prudent because we understand the cost, and off we go. And then you have reckless and accidental, where you're just sort of ignorant of best practices and you don't even know that you're taking on that debt and the cost that you're going to incur later on. And this first type of debt that I was talking about, the one that's inevitable because your understanding of the problem evolves, is in that weird quadrant of it's accidental, but it's prudent. You know, like after a year working on this piece of software, we understand how we should have built it from the get-go, right? But it's accidental. We can predict the future, and there's no way we could have known. Another question is, why should non-technical people care about this stuff? Well, one simple reason: if you're allocating engineering resources, you can allocate them to, broadly speaking, maintenance work or feature work, right? We gravitate towards shipping new features because it's usually fairly easy to draw a straight line from we ship this stuff, these good things will happen to the company. And we ship these features, we close deals, we ship these features, engagement goes up, et cetera, et cetera. But technical debt has these second order consequences that are very much going to affect the business, but they're a bit more sneaky, like I was saying at the beginning, right? And you need to be able to make a business case for why you should allocate resources on this piece of maintenance work over this other piece of maintenance work and this other feature that you would otherwise ship, right? So that's why it's very important to understand the consequences that tech debt can have on the company. And to summarize something we mentioned before, the three main buckets are: it will impact engineering productivity because the system will become overly complex, and that complexity makes it so that you can't predict how long things are going to take to ship, and they will take much longer than you think, right? So that causes issues. Number two is what I call product quality and opportunity. So you have technical debt, you're going to have bugs sprouting all over the place. You don't even know where they come from, right? And also you have technical debt. There are some features that you'd love to build that you will not be able to build, either because it's just outright impossible with your current stack, or because it's just prohibitively expensive. No, it would take a full rewrite to build this thing, right? And that opportunity cost is huge, right? You're sort of locking yourself out of a whole bunch of business opportunities because of this. And the final one is the main reason why engineers end up leaving companies because they're unhappy is because they can't bear the idea of taking 2 months to update the website footer. They want to build good stuff at pace, and it makes them unhappy to have to deal with technical debt. And all of these things are, business concerns, right? People who run companies who should be aware of it, like you were saying, all the way up to the investors. So I've heard stories of, boards of directors who are talking about technical debt on a regular basis.
Well, that doesn't surprise me because it's an invisible thing that you end up paying for. And, I would write, so one of the things I do is I write quarterly investor reports, and that's where you give product updates. And it is much more pleasant to say we've released these things and they're having good results than to say we spent a while finding bugs, getting rid of features that nobody used, cleaning out the corpses in our back end. Like that's not what, that doesn't make it for that glossy letter. And, most, if the people who are reading this, the people who are reading these investor reports, that's why it's important for them to understand that if all you're getting are these glossy kind of reports, either you're not being told about technical debt because it's just not that interesting. It could also be because the founder doesn't know. And if they don't know, that means that they might run into trouble later, or it means that they might run out of runway, so they might run out of cash sooner than they had hoped, or not be able to actually create all the features with the money that they did raise, because they have to essentially go and clean their rooms.
Well, I'll give you an example to show you what sort of the ideal situation looks like. I heard from an engineer who was telling me that he had trouble convincing their product manager that they should spend time refactoring their SQL queries to use joins. And what does that mean? As a bunch of non-techies right now, I don't know. What's the value to the business? I have no idea. Why should I prioritize resources to that? I don't know, right? But when the engineer managed to explain that, look, if we refactor our SQL queries to use joins, our pages, our dashboard will load some sub 1 second instead of in 30 seconds. And it means that the 2 customers that we lost last month because they were sitting in front of their dashboard waiting for it to load for 5 minutes wouldn't have gone. All of a sudden, the business case becomes reducing churn. So to bubble it up all the way to what it might look like in an investor update, if you say, hey, we had as a priority reducing churn, and we identified page loading times, particularly the dashboard, as one big reason why people end up leaving our product, we have since then invested these engineering resources into fixing our data models, our queries, our cluster, whatever it is you need to improve performance, and we anticipate churn will go down. Now that's glossy, right? That sounds great. So it's really about how we communicate and sort of finding a shared language.
So what would be your advice to that product manager? Because I often see this miscommunication, because I often think that developers who maybe haven't been used to working with business people, so maybe they've only worked with other developers before, and then they either rise up through the ranks or they go into a smaller company, and then they're facing business people, and then they say things like, we need to raise our SQL query, and that's, might as well be Chinese. That really doesn't mean anything. And unless the product manager or, the founder, unless they can ask the right questions to tease out the meaning, then it's possible, and I've seen this happen before, that the engineer gives up and walks away because they believe they got a no. But they got a no because the person they were speaking to didn't understand what they were being asked.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. My advice would be to ask questions to tease out what the impact of that debt is on the business. I'll give you an example. How much slower do you anticipate you'll ship features that touch this code if we don't refactor it, if we don't spend time dealing with it? And then you can do a fairly simple analysis, which is, okay, I think it'll take us 2 days to fix that. And I have 10 people shipping features on this thing who tell me they're wasting 3 hours every time they do it. What's, pros and cons, right? Like I get to compare apples to apples. The next one would be, what what proportion of our bugs do you think are caused by this debt? Like, what kind of quality issues does it introduce into the product that then impact our customers? You can also ask, what are some features that we have on our roadmap that you think will be more difficult to ship because of that piece of debt? What are some features that you think will just be outright impossible to ship because of that? And the last one is like, how much do you think this piece of debt is impacting the team's morale? Like, are people afraid of modifying the code because they're worried the house of cards will come down, and so it's like a chore to work on this thing? And then you get to decide on what the main priority as a business is. Typically, it's one of the things that product managers have to do, right? Bridge this gap between technical and business speak, and allocate resources accordingly. Now, my second piece, so just to close that one, right? There are questions that you can ask about the impact of technical debt, and you will need to rely on your engineers, typically the team lead that you interact with, say, before sprint planning, to find answers to this, right? Now, the next thing that I would encourage that product manager to think about is, we have a saying at Stepsize, which is dealing with technical debt is a process, not a project. You don't want to be that company who has to pause all feature development after 3 years of working on your code base because it's just ossified and you can't modify it anymore. Like that situation that you described earlier, where engineers go, there's almost some kind of revolt and they go, time out, I need 6 months to fix this thing. Like that, for a lot of company, is death. I'm not joking, right? Because sometimes you're just not in the right place financially to be able to take that hit. Sometimes your competitors will just overtake you. It's just not a good situation to be in. So if tech debt is a process, not a project, how can you continuously be addressing it as you're shipping features on your code base? Because that's another good way to justify spending time on maintenance work, is you bundle it with feature work that has you touching the code where you need to do the maintenance, right?
But
and a lot of
companies, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of companies I speak to will allocate 10 to 30% of every sprint to dealing with this maintenance work, to fixing the technical debt. Now, it's not a silver bullet. It won't solve all of your tech debt problems. There are other things to consider as part of the sort of perfect process to deal with debt as a company, but it's a great place to start.
So it's a bit like eating healthily most of the time, and then having a detox and then going to a health farm every few months.
Yeah, it's just eat your vegetables. Yeah.
Right. Just eat your vegetables. Like don't subsist on Doritos, basically.
No.
This was so useful. And you see, it wasn't that hard. Maybe you have to listen to it a couple of times and take some notes. But come on, none of this is beyond you. You are smart. You can do this. You totally can have the knowledge and the confidence you need to succeed in tech as a non-techie. And if you want to transition career into tech, I have a treat for you. On the 26th of April, which is happening next week, and if you're listening in the future, that's 26th of April, 2021, I'll be teaching a free class on how to transition into a career in tech. I will show you 5 different case studies of people who do not have technical backgrounds and who have successfully transitioned into different careers in tech. If you think you want to work in the tech sector but you don't know where to start, then the session is definitely for you. The link is in the show notes, or just go to techfornontechies.co/career-masterclass. That's techfornontechies.co/career-masterclass. If you join live, you can ask your questions and get some suggestions for practical steps to take next. And my dears, if this episode floats your boat and you want more, then come and join us as a member at Tech for Non-techies. Our membership is your best friend in tech. We have live sessions and masterclasses with experts like Alexandre. You also get monthly member meetups, Q&A with me, and learning notes on key aspects of technology like AI, product management, and the app economy. So what's not to like? Nothing. I tell you, nothing. So come and check us out on techfornontechies.co/membership. That's it for now. My dear smart people, have a fabulous week, and I'll speak to you soon. Ciao.